Good morning, everyone. Welcome again to this new episode of our webinar series on the EPBD implementation. My name is Rémi Colombet. I'm the head of policy at Efficient Buildings Europe. Next slide, please. So for those who don't know us, we're the European Association representing manufacturers of products, equipments, and solutions for energy efficiency in buildings. So really promoting a holistic vision of the performance of buildings at European level. Thank you. Next slide. I'll be the moderator for this session, and today we are discussing indoor environmental quality, or IEQ. So this is somewhat of a new focus for the directive, but it's at the core of people's expectations, especially after the COVID years. Health, comfort have become some of the main drivers for energy renovations. As we spend most of our time indoors, several studies now show very clearly that temperature, CO2, acoustics, lighting, and more all have significant impacts on health, productivity, or capacity to learn also. And so this webinar will dive into the relevant EPBD provisions, the implementation process, existing solutions to improve IEQ in buildings, and also a concrete example from Ireland. So we're very fortunate to have great speakers with us today. Marco Morini from the European Commission's DG Energy, Roman Faure from Efficient Buildings Europe, Jens Christoffersen from Velux, Christina von Westenhagen from Johnson Controls and Vice President of Efficient Buildings Europe, and last but not least, Conor Hanfi from the Sustainable Energy Authority of Ireland. So before we dive in, some housekeeping rules. You cannot activate your camera or microphone, but we really encourage you to ask all the questions that you have in the chat. I'll keep an eye on it and share them with our speakers. We'll have 2 moments for Q&As, one after the first 2 presentations and one at the end. So don't be shy, engage with us, and I'll be happy to share your questions with our speakers. Now, moving on to our first speaker, Marco, many thanks again for being with us today. The floor is yours.
Good morning. I hope you hear me well. Thank you for having me. I am Marco Morini. I'm a policy officer in DG Energy, specifically in the Unit B3, dealing with the energy efficiency in buildings and products. And today I will talk to you about the main provisions on indoor environmental quality in the EPBD and the guidance that we have drafted and that was adopted in June 2025. That is supposed to support member states in the implementation of indoor environmental quality provisions in the EPBD and in general, of course, the whole package for the implementation of the EPBD. So going to the next slide. I would like to set a little bit, in a way, the scene for these topics. The challenges in EU buildings on indoor environmental quality are quite well known. As it was said before, 90% of the average life of a European is spent inside buildings. And at the same time, we see that there are issues in our buildings also as regards indoor air quality and also comfort in general. So 1 out of 4 Europeans live in buildings where indoor air quality falls below national standards. These are data from the BPIE Healthy Building Barometer, which shows the importance of the issue. And also, of course, we have spoken significantly about the energy poverty, which is very strongly linked also with indoor environmental quality, which is not only linked to air quality, but is also linked to adequate comfort, thermal comfort condition inside the buildings. And as was said before as well, the COVID pandemic gave us a series of important underline the importance of having healthy buildings and the EPBD and the renovation wave before that really took this into account and is trying to take into account the importance of renovating the existing building stock and tackling not only the aspects related to its energy performance and to lowering energy bills, but also the links with high indoor standards. So going to the next slide. I will introduce now in this provision how indoor environmental quality is addressed in the PBD, and it is addressed quite comprehensively. As you can see here in several articles, indoor environmental quality is mentioned in the scope of the directive. There is a clear definition which member states will have to transpose, and that has a minimum scope relating to some parameters which are basically temperature, humidity, presence of contaminants, and ventilation rate. So we are talking essentially of thermal comfort and indoor air quality, but member states, when transposing this definition, can also go beyond and address also other aspects that are relevant for the health and well-being of occupants, for example, such as acoustics or lighting, which was mentioned by Remy before me. The EPBD specifically introduces at Article 5, 7, and 8 important provisions on the addressing of indoor environmental quality in the design phase of a building, so when defining minimum energy performance, but also when in the case of a new building or a major renovation. And specifically, the adjective optimal is introduced when we're dealing with new buildings, underlining the member states could and maybe should also opt for a more ambitious requirement when dealing with new buildings rather than with renovated buildings, where existing condition might lead to more complications towards maybe higher standards and the installation of certain technologies, for example. In addition, there are requirements that are addressed to the implementation of adequate indoor environmental quality standards in operation. So we're talking about existing buildings, and these are for example, requirements that can be also checked with inspections as per Article 23, but also when drafting an EPC, because indeed when inadequate indoor environmental quality standards, according to what has been set at the member state level, the citizens have to be informed and recommendations have to be provided, so that when a major renovation is going to be done, some actions can be taken in this regard. An important provision in the PPD in Article 13, also in this case, 13.5, is introduces the obligation to equip non-residential zero-emission buildings with measuring and control devices for indoor air quality. And when technically and economically feasible, it also mandates the equipment of non-residential buildings undergoing major renovation with measuring and control devices for indoor air quality. Of course, here we are talking, for example, of zero-emission buildings, so it will be something that will apply to new buildings, and it's important also to underline that there is a specific focus on non-residential buildings. We're talking about schools, offices, or hospitals, so buildings where there are potential issues for and issues related to inadequate indoor air quality could be problematic. So measuring and control devices are very important. Then the PBD gives a great visibility to indoor environmental quality standards, and in general to indoor environmental quality in all the let's say in several information tools for citizens. For example, in the EPCs, there are, as I was saying, recommendations which are mandatory to improve the indoor environmental quality, and there are also voluntary indicators in the template that want to give in a way visibility to those buildings that have indoor environmental quality sensor and controls installed. And then there is also provisions in the building renovation plans where policies and measures for IEQ improvement may be introduced, just as I was saying, to give an additional attention to the issue, which has been, as I was saying, addressed comprehensively in this text. Going to the next slide. I would like to highlight the work that we have done in this year and a half after the EPBD adoption and entry into force in 2024, in May 2024. First of all, the most important work that we have done is indeed the implementation support package, which was published in June 2025. And specifically, we have worked in great cooperation with member states and in close cooperation with also with stakeholders to help countries transpose and implement the directive into law. And in particular, we have delivered the secondary legislation packages foreseen by the text, but also worked on a guidance package with 13 annexes dedicated to specific topics, with the aim to provide interpretative and practical guidance on new or updated provisions. And we have also worked on supporting for the preparation of the national building renovation plans. One important thing that I would like to mention here, and it's quite an important information, is that until now the guidance package was published only, and so the 13 annexes were published only in English language. We are finally ready with the translations in all the 25 languages of member states, and they will be published 1 week from now. On the 25th of November is the set date. So member states will also have the guidance annexes in their own language. So we can go to the next slide. And one of the elements is the IEQ guidance, indeed, which is Annex 10. In the guidance, as the objective of helping member states understanding and addressing the new provisions, providing technical background, and also to ensure a cost-effective implementation. Let's say we have 4 main elements. There is a guidance which help member states in on the identification of design requirements for indoor environmental quality, but also for the implementation of adequate indoor environmental quality standards in existing buildings. What we do in the guidance is we provide ranges, potential ranges, making reference to the existing standards, specifically the 16798 part 1. We clarify the elements of flexibility, and we also indicate, provide examples of practical guidance also, for example, on different building types. For example, how can member states address different building types? We also provide guidelines of measuring and controls of IEQ, which means, for example, we clarify what it means measuring and control. So here clearly we see a link with demand control ventilation, which is also linked with energy savings, I would say. And what we provide is also some proxies for addressing it. For example, CO2 is a very good proxy for ventilation rate in buildings, and this is something that is very easy to measure. So we are not asking for very sophisticated things in the guidance, and we try to clarify this in the guidance, providing some elements for member states. And then there is the extreme outdoor conditions. We are basically talking about provisions that support member states in making buildings more adaptive and resilient to climate change. And one of the elements is indeed the fact that indoor comfort is going to be more and more affected by the increasing of temperature in the future. So we provide also we recall some measures to reduce indoor temperature by design, and we support member states by providing possible definitions of heat waves and examples of indicators to address such issues. Going to the last slide. I tried to condense, but it's not very easy to be short on this. I just want to recall that indeed the EPBD addresses indoor environmental quality comprehensively. And what we have tried to do in the guidance is really to ensure that indoor environmental quality standards and monitoring is done. But also we want to highlight that it is cost effective and it is possible to do it cost effectively. And that's why and it's one thing that we have tried to address in the guidance, because indeed we think that it's very important to address indoor environmental quality, and renovating existing buildings is not only anymore really about having a more sustainable building stock only, but we really need also to have a building stock that is healthier and safer. Otherwise, it doesn't make sense to intervene on the building stock if we are not making it more comfortable for those that live in it. So thank you very much, and I'm happy to take further questions.
Thanks a lot, Marco. It was a really good presentation, very, very comprehensive, and indeed, we always have to think about the end goal and why we're doing this, as to make buildings a better place to live, to work in for people. So thanks a lot for this presentation. And before going to the first Q&A session, I'll call on Roman Faure from Efficient Buildings Europe. Roman, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Remy. So hello, everyone. My name is Roman Faure. I am a EU Project and Policy Officer at Efficient Buildings Europe. And we can go to the next slide. Today, I will present to you our implementation guide recommendations on IEQ. So just quickly before we start, the implementation guide is a publication that we had last year in November that aims at supporting ministries and other relevant stakeholders in implementing the Buildings Performance Directive. And it has 55 recommendations, case studies, and best practices on how to best implement this directive. Next slide, please. Before we start going into the recommendations that we have on implementing indoor environmental quality, I wanted to quickly go over why this is so important. It has already been said a little bit by Marco's presentation, but I wanted to complement with a few numbers first and then with a few elements that we have. So to complement on the numbers from Marco's presentation, to show how important that is in our environmental quality, in 2012, nearly 100,000 Europeans died due to indoor pollutions. And beyond that, 30 million Europeans have insufficient access to daylight, which has a terrible impact on a person's health. So now we can move to why it matters. The IEQ, I wanted to remind the definition, but it has already been done a little bit by Marco's presentation, but it is defined in the EPBD as the result of an assessment of the conditions inside a building that influence the health and well-being of its occupants. So why that matters is that IEQ comes as a response to the current lack of data and methodology to evaluate the broader benefits of energy efficiency improvements. The Commission's presentation showed that many Europeans live in inefficient and unhealthy buildings with poor daylight or an indoor climate, which has, as I said, a direct impact on the person's health. So this has been a growing consideration post-COVID, as a lot of people suffered from a lockdown in unhealthy homes. And this new image of better living conditions led to a lot of renovation decisions to improve living conditions with better daylight or better ventilation, etc. But beyond this, driving renovation decisions and also demonstrate the broader benefits of energy efficiency improvements, indoor environmental quality is important as a matter of climate resilience of buildings, because it gives us a clear indication of the level of comfort in buildings with safe indoor temperatures and also air quality. So it's participates in protecting EU citizens from extreme climate events such as heat waves, for instance. We can move to the next slide, and I will start presenting our recommendations, which are grouped in three categories. And the first one, because it is the basis of the well-functioning IEQ system, is a comprehensive IEQ definition. So as we said, the EPBD defines the IEQ, but the definition is actually very broad in the directive, because using the terms such as those relating to the blah, 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 the directive does not actually is giving a very broad definition. So when being implemented, IEQ can actually encompass more features that are not directly referred to. So for us, and Marco already said it, and it is in the guidance from the Commission, daylight and acoustics must be taken into account in the IEQ definition. And also, one of our recommendations is for member states to gain support to introduce an ambitious requirements for IEQ is to use the standard 16798-1 as a guidance to actually have good parameters in indoor environmental quality. Next slide, please. So once the IEQ is properly defined, then it needs to be used and measured and used in a coherent way. So for the measurements, it is important for us that in national legislation, there is a differentiation between the IEQ parameters that are monitored during the use phase and the ones that are factored in during the design phase of the building project, because the parameters would not be the same. So in the use phase, we would use more CO2 measures or temperatures, for instance, whereas in the design phase, it would be more the light or the acoustics, as we mentioned before as well. For the measurements, it's also important that member states use the tools that are given to them in the EPBD. For instance, the building automation and control systems that have been mentioned in Marco's presentation. The BACs must be capable of monitoring IEQ by the 29th of May 2026. So member states should really move on to that to guarantee IEQ measurements. And then on the use part of the IEQ, the Smart Readiness Indicator is a tool to assess the capacity of a building to adapt to the needs of its occupants regarding, among all, IEQ. So it is currently tested in some member states, this tool, but not all of them. So for us, it's really important that the scheme is extended to all member states to combine digital approaches and improve indoor environmental quality. But also we need to guarantee a comprehensive implementation of the EPBD, because as it was mentioned already, the IEQ is referred to in different articles of the directive and so is linked to different policy instruments. It's integrated in the national building renovation plans, where member states must include an estimate of the benefits of this measurement, in the minimum energy performance requirements, in the renovation passport, and also in the EPC. So it really needs to be well integrated to be a coherent framework. And finally, on the use is the current methodology for cost optimal levels is suggesting now that only energy-related health externalities are addressed in the calculation. But it does not include, it does not properly quantify the multiple benefits of energy efficiency. So we think that the methodology needs to be extended to the wider health benefits not related to energy use, such as better daylight or soundproofing or indoor air quality, because these all have an impact on health, and these are indoor environmental quality parameters. And last but not least, it is about the tracking IEQ related data. There's currently a lack and a gap in this data collection. So to counter that, we recommend to include healthy buildings indicator in the building stock observatory, but also to encourage national policy instruments to integrate these indicators in their instruments, such as legislative instruments, advisory, financing, renovation plan, etc. So this will enable a better tracking of IEQ-related data. Next slide, please. And the last batch of our recommendation is about awareness raising and capacity building, because there is still a gap in public awareness and the skills to guarantee healthy buildings in the EU. The first one, because IEQ benefits actually are closer to people's concern to drive renovation. We should really advertise these benefits when talking about energy efficiency renovations or energy efficiency improvements. So for that, we recommend linking the IEQ benefits with each step of the renovation passports. This will allow citizens and businesses to assess the different benefits of the renovation projects. But also, public buildings, when they go through a renovation, they should lead by example and show, promote, and advertise the IEQ improvements. For instance, on schools or hospitals, it can be a really good advertisement for these benefits. And finally, the skills, the existing education and training programs for professionals, for professional development courses needs to be extended. This will allow to equip practitioners and also decision makers with skills on how to integrate IEQ indicators alongside building parameters. And last slide, please. The good practices are, as I said at the beginning, a part of our implementation guide. So I wanted to just give a quick overview because these are practices that we have identified through the EPBD WISE project, which is a live project we're a part of. And these on the side, Smart Living EPC and UCERT projects are two projects that show how to best integrate IEQ in EPCs, and maybe just quickly, UCERT, for instance, is aiming at making certification schemes more practical and more reliable via user-centered approach, and they integrate IEQ in their EPCs. That's it for me. Thank you very much, and I'm here to reply to any questions.
Thank you, Roman. Thanks a lot. It was really clear. Go to the next slide, please, and open our first Q&A session. So to all participants, don't hesitate to share your questions via the chat. I'll ask them to our participants, but just before you do that, just to start with a couple of questions to our speakers so far. For you, Marco, we know that the Commission is quite active now that it's implementation time. You've mentioned the guidance. What else is the Commission doing to support member states, and what can member states that need this kind of support expect from you guys currently in the coming weeks?
Yes. Yeah, first of all, I would like to highlight indeed that the guidelines were really drafted in cooperation with member states. We have a committee and there is a project that is paid by the Commission, but is managed by member states and is for member states, which is the EPBD concerted action, which is a forum that takes place on average twice every year, where there is really a network of member states that is discussing and exchanging on how to implement the EPBD, and this is another place where we are involved and we really try to support as much as possible. So there is a lot of work ongoing in that regard. We continue to have periodical meetings with member states. We have offered on a request basis bilateral meetings, but also we have proactively done some missions where possible. Of course, it's 27 member states. It is not easy. But yes, we are really engaged on all the topics, not only on indoor environmental quality, but on what member states might need for their implementation. And currently, there is the big deadline of the national building renovation plans, and so we are in contact with member states, and we thank also you for the support that you give to us through the projects and also to your engagement. So every time member states need some support, we are available, I would say.
Thanks a lot, and thanks a lot for reminding this very important deadline of the 31st of December this year for the draft national building renovation plans. These are very important planning tools for member states, but also for all the stakeholders community. You have to align quite a few stakeholders to finally deliver on the EPBD, and those plans are really the place to do so. We'll have a question on the issue with daylight and artificial light. I'll let you think about this one, and just before that, I'll ask Roman if you can share more examples of practical applications of IEQ.
Yes, of course. We actually had the Renovate Europe Day that we organized a couple of weeks ago in Copenhagen, and we had some site visits to accompany this event. And one of the site visits was a residential building called Potion House. I will put the link in the chat after. But this was an example of renovation sites that put priority on indoor environmental quality, and they focused on natural and mechanical ventilation with, for instance, new vents and automated windows to regulate the indoor environmental quality. So that was a very interesting way of showing how a renovation project can improve the indoor environmental quality of a building.
Thanks a lot, Roman. And it's a good segue. We'll see directly from technology and solution developer just after what exists and what's there to actually address those IEQ requirements. But before that, back to Marco on this question of how EPD addresses daylight and artificial light in terms of IEQ.
Yes. The text, of course, it comes from co-legislators' decision, and the final text landed on a definition of indoor air quality that is focused rather on thermal comfort and indoor air quality. We are still talking, of course, about a directive that is mostly with the energy performance of buildings. So it was not easy to expand too much the definition of indoor environmental quality. However, as I was saying, and it was mentioned before, also by Roman, there is the possibility for member states to go beyond what is in the EPBD and introduce some requirements also in terms of daylight, for example. And it's already the case in several member states. It's not necessary that the APBD has to address all the issues that relate to building codes. So maybe member states have already some requirements in that regard. As regard artificial light, and maybe I will also reply to the second question by Dick Rutten. In APBD, we do not focus indeed on the comfort aspects of indoor environmental quality related to lighting, but we do introduce some requirements on automatic lighting controls. So with the idea to limit the consumption of lighting system and reduce the operation times, but also, for example, to ensure that the artificial lighting the consumption is reduced and is linked to what is exactly needed in the building, for example, also in relation with outdoor conditions. So there are some provisions that address the issues of lighting, and we see, of course, more relevant in the the residential buildings, and indeed these provisions are in Article 13.12, apply to the same buildings for which building automation and control systems have been set up. So large non-residential buildings and later on large but a little bit smaller residential buildings for starting 2030. So there are some provisions also on artificial lighting, let's say, and on the controls of artificial lighting, always with the idea of saving energy while ensuring that the adequate level of illumination and artificial lighting are ensured.
Thanks a lot, Marco. I see two questions in one that are related. First is on if there's any certification scheme that addresses IEQ at the moment. I know that a lot of large building owners that are working internationally also work with such certification standards as LEED, BREEAM, and those kind of certifications. And linked to that, there's another question in the same paragraph asking for the sort of timeline for this IEQ provisions to be implemented, but also integrated in the tools that you've mentioned. So IEQ, but so EPC, sorry, but maybe you can mention a bit more also on the smart readiness indicator, which has a process of its own going beyond the EPBD implementation deadline.
Yes. On the certification standards, yes, we do not prescribe anything specific to member states. We in the guidance, for example, we make reference to also to the framework, to the levels framework. We make reference to the existing standards, and we make reference also to TAIL, which is, I think, is related to indoor environmental quality in renovation. But of course, there are other member states are free to take into account other references. The guidance is not binding in that regard. While for the progress and timeline on the IEQ criteria, well, there is the transposition deadline, which is the 29th of May 2026. And as for IEQ, I would say that the timeline, the requirements, the most important requirements is really those related to recommendations for improvement of IEQ, because they are binding, while, for example, there are other voluntary requirements that I was mentioning before, for example, for the presence of fixed sensors, for which member states might decide to introduce information, for example. But the most important is the recommendation, because basically we are really pushing professionals to give information on IEQ to building owners. So building owners will be informed not only if they pay a lot of money for electricity, but also if they have an unhealthy building, and they will also be informed on what they can do to improve it. As for the SRI, yes, there is clearly in the SRI, it's also very relevant, because there is a link, there is a specific mention now also really to indoor environmental quality, but of course the SRI is also related to the comfort and to the capability of building to ensure convenient and comfortable life conditions to the occupants. And in terms of timeline, the Commission is now working on a study that will basically analyze the voluntary test phases the member states have carried out in the previous years, starting 2020, I would say. And we are taking into account these lessons learned, and there will be an update of the Delegated and Implementing Act on SRI that will take into account this information. And I would say that the SRI become, in the EPBD, there is a clear scope for the SRI, which is going to be large buildings. So those just to the same that are interested by bucks, and they will have to have SRI in place. But we are also trying to see what are the potential for this scheme, for this indicator for the future. And on that, we will need indeed first to go through this first study, and then we will take it from there. There are some deadlines that I don't remember by heart also for the new delegated act, but this is more or less the timeline.
Thanks for that, Marco. I think it's great to have some clarity on the process. And I mean, we've seen the importance of this kind of information tools, especially with the EPCs, where now people realize what they mean, what they entail, and we see the impact on property prices, for example. So it's true that it could be the same level of awareness coming for questions of IEQ in the future. So thanks a lot to you both. Please stay with us. We'll go to the next presentations, and we'll have a final round of Q&As at the end. So next up is Jens Christoffersen from Velux. Please, the floor is yours.
Thank you, and thank you for inviting me. So next slide, please. So as you said, I'm employed at Velux in the Velux Group, and I'm also at the moment also acting chairperson of the European standardization that was working on looking at the standard called daylight in buildings. So that's just for your background. Next, please. As you see, and this is from our Healthy Home Barometer from 2024, and as our two previous speakers, Marco and Romain, also mentioned, is that we spend most of the time indoors. We also know that we should be aware that the way we live in our homes is becoming more and more as something else, is also something as a place where we work, as well as our own buildings, where in general is a place where we spend most of the time, as we know. And to say so is that, the environment condition has an impact on us. And we know that this can affect our personal health and well-being. We know that this also have an impact, on our physical and mental well-being. So you can say that it should be, a priority for that we need to provide a sustainable and an affordable, healthy buildings. And then what you can see on the slide is that this is a collaboration in 2024 with BPIE, and we have a next edition in 2026, and they illustrate the five elements of the indoor environment, where indoor environmental quality is, of course, part of this. Next, please. And why does it matter? I think our two previous speaker was very clear on the benefits. I will highlight a few of them. This is and you can find this, of course, online in more details, where you can see all the description of what some of the benefits of healthy buildings on the four building categories we mentioned here: the homes, workplaces, schools, and hospitals. So I'll only highlight a few of the figures. As you can say, improving your home and renovate your home, for example, can have a positive impact on your mental health. We know that a good indoor environment in offices, then you are more likely to improve your productivity. And the indoor environment in schools, we know that has an impact and affect our children's learning ability. So you can say there is a good you can say good business case to invest in more healthy buildings, especially for the people that occupy our buildings. So that's why we think it's important. Next, please. And what we do, and this is something that will be published also in 2026, is that we try to explore the people's perception, experience, and what you can expect around healthy buildings. And we just conducted, together with BPIE and YouGo, a survey in 6 countries. And we raised a few questions. And the question was how indoor environment affect physical and mental well-being, the satisfaction with aspects like air quality, temperature, light, and ventilation, and the attitudes towards healthier, more resilient buildings. We also looked a little bit about awareness and the motivation and barriers to improve home health and support the policies promoting healthy living environments. And what you can see is that the finding is rather clear, actually, that nearly half of the Europeans believe their homes are not equipped to handle extreme heat. Around 6 in 10 Europeans also think there should be stricter regulation on how buildings are designed and maintained to ensure that they support health and well-being. Next, give another click and click again because it's animated. Sorry for that. However, a significant awareness gap is also remains. As you can see, 7 in 10 respondents say they are not aware of any regulation or guidelines on healthy building standards, while only 17 say they are aware. So our 2 previous speakers really highlight the importance of the initiatives going on at the moment. Next, please. Just to give you a small brief in what we try to present and how we try to be present in many of the IEQ dimensions. And as I mentioned in the research publication, this is just a snap of what some of the publication we do. This is the highlighting that we have done a set of healthy buildings parameter, and you can find them on online. They are free available. We do also try to be present at conferences or publish journal papers together with the partner we do the healthy home barometer, and also as you know, BPIE have together with us have published a scientific paper on this. So going on the circle against the clock, we also do have a place where we do conferences and networks, and we think this is very important. One of the things I will really highlight here is what we call the Data Symposium. We just hosted the 10th symposium this year. But over the years, it has been recognized as a key international data place or a conference where we attract and engage with key stakeholders and customers in various fields, from building designers, architects and engineers, research, policymakers, and so on. A side note to this is that we also host a set of network for PhD students. Because you can say these are kind of the next generation of people in the academia as well as somewhere else in the industry. And we are not just focusing on Europe. We are quite broad across the globe, as you can see on the top slide, that we are connected mostly, of course, in Europe, but we also connect to both the North America and the South America and Asia as well. And we do partner up with these kind of people. And then we are engaged in education, and I mentioned the PhD network, but we do also participate as industrial partners in some of these EU initiatives on PhD networks as well. Next, please. But to go a little bit back to what we are all talking about is actually what we can do with the indoor environmental quality is that one of the things that we all, that our founding father said is that one experiment is worth more than 1,000 expert views, and we use that quite extensively because we would like to taste our own medicine. And what you see here, from the top, is our new innovation house in Denmark, where we were founded. And this is a place that we've transformed an old warehouse to an innovation house for our employees in Denmark, a part of in Jutland. Next, please. And of course, to test the medicine ourselves, this is I will only highlight two things. I will highlight what we did in relation to daylighting, and I will highlight what we did in relation to the thermal comfort and indoor air quality. What you can see in this slide is that we use a kind of what we call a compass, or what we call a people and planet radar. And we think it's very important that if you do look at the future, we need to consider, of course, what we can do for the people as well as the planet, and then these two goes a little bit hand in hand. We are looking at what you can see to the right side is some of the analysis that has been done within the building, and we're using the European standard on daylight in buildings as our guidance for this one. And the requirement in Denmark, as you can see at the bottom part, is that we are beyond the requirement in Denmark regarding daylight provision, because we find the daylight provision as an essential part of our story. We know Velux is a combination of daylight and fresh air. But also that we think healthy buildings should go beyond just as following the requirement. We need to do something more than this. So we did the analysis in a more what we call a human-centric approach, and we try to simulate how people experience daylight indoors. Because we know that we have learned that these kind of things have an impact on our human health, emotion, and comfort. So we do something more than that. And then you can say, could we do more? And you can see we are not in the top end of the radar, the highest. And that because the level we put in here is very ambitious and is far more ambitious than the regulation. But it include, and we can do we have a good distribution within. So it's a very good results on the way we have designed our renovated building. Next, please. Again, a little bit on the people and planet radar. We can look at thermal comfort and indoor air. As I said, we would like to say that we would like to use passive solutions. So we have highlighted the very important things to look at what we can do using natural ventilation and ventilated cooling, if it's too warm and so on. We are using the standard that has already been mentioned, the 16798 on energy performance of buildings as our guidelines. And what you can see is the design criteria we use. We use large room volumes. We, of course, have a good strategy for how we ventilate our space. That's both from cross ventilation and stack ventilation. We have an open connection between the floors. Of course, we need external shading, and this is integrated in the roof as well as on the windows. And we open and control our windows smart and use a few supplement exhaust air fans when needed. So this is again highlighting using passive elements to minimize the use of energy, and also highlight the importance that we are creating a space for the people that is going to work, that is already working there. And to say so, if you are able to visit the building, I think you will find it quite exceptional. Next, please. And this is actually my final remark. This is a quote from Joseph Allen from Harvard School of Public Health. He said that your building design is more important to your health than your doctor. And I think that follows very well the two previous speakers as well. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And it's really good to see the great work that you've done on highlighting and getting the data. It's really hard to regulate what you can measure. So it's really great to see that there are companies that are moving forward with this and being proactive. So now we'll be switching from passive tech to active tech. And I'm really glad to welcome Christina, our next speaker. The floor is yours.
Thank you, Remy. Thank you for also inviting me to this very important forum here. Alessia, if you could go to the next slide and the next slide and talk about what makes a building healthy. So we touched upon this several times, but really if you dive down, you see that from ventilation, over moisture, dust pads, thermal health, air quality, all those parameters that you see here are very important and that they make a building healthy. If you go to the next slide. And what we see is that the experiences, the well-being and the productivity in buildings is very valuable for building owners and building operators if you look at buildings from the commercial buildings uptake. But overall, and we said it already, we spend over 90% of our lives indoor. That will mean that by the age of 80, if we reach 80, we have spent 72 years of our lives indoor. And in a typical year, if we go to the office, we will take about 2 million breaths in our office. So improved air quality and indoor environmental quality is very important. And the estimates are that it really improves occupant productivity by up to 10%. And that also increases employee engagement and retention. So the technology responds to the life activity and to the needs of the people in the building environment. And it unlocks the full potential of people using offices, being in schools and also in universities. Customers are increasingly focused on occupant health and wellness as a driver of high performance of teams. If we go to the next slide, please. And if we dive this down, so what actually are the typical operational costs for making a building healthy, then we see that the spend of a building operations is roughly 90% on staff costs, 9% on rental costs, and about 1% is spent on energy cost. But the increase in employee productivity is actually offsetting. If you just say 1% of productivity is offsetting 90% of the 1% of the energy cost and about 10% of the rental cost, and between 5 and 16% of the operational costs of the building. So, and that's measured on given a fixed enterprise budget. If we can go to the next slide. What actually now impacts employees' health? So if we look at a healthy building environment, meaning a focus on the indoor air quality, contributes to 77% of workers are reporting experiencing work-related stress, but healthier work environments can significantly reduce the stress. And all the data here is built on a study that comes from the American Psychological Association together with Stastica. And 90% of workers said that it's important to work for an organization that values their emotional and psychological well-being, because an improved indoor environment also has a significant impact on improved mental health. And as a consequence leads to fewer work-related injuries and work-related illnesses and higher job satisfaction, which is reported that 72% of workers are really focused on the employer caring about a healthy lifestyle of the employee. So good air quality can significantly improve mental and physical health of the employee that spend their time at offices. If we go to the next slide, please. But seeing from the building owner and employer's perspective, there are also significant impacts that are consumed if there is a focus on indoor environmental quality. And the study that we are bringing forward here is coming from Harvard Business Review and the Journal of Corporate Real Estate, which are noting that employees in well-ventilated offices with good air quality perform 8 to 11 times better And that also shows in a 35% reduction of reduced absenteeism and higher employee satisfaction with an 18% increase of employee retention. So that also then leads to a 30% higher increase in employee engagement. So overall, investing in healthy offices, healthy commercial buildings leads to higher employee health, employee satisfaction, and employee retention. If we can go to the next slide, please. So I'm just going through this on a very high level. You see here what are the aspects that are contributing and making up the foundation for a healthy building. So you see all of these aspects here play a significant role, from the ventilation to also the controls and the digital systems and the analysis. If we can go to the next slide, please. And here you see the customer, the interface between indoor environmental quality, occupant experience, and energy savings. So the overlay of all of this is indoor environmental quality that really leads to energy savings, space utilization, and will also drive on buildings' performance to improve, and which leads to further improvements. If we go to the next slide, please. So we showed this slide at the beginning to illustrate all the different elements that have an impact on the indoor environmental quality. But how does that relate to energy consumption and also to the impacts on IEQ? And you see that there's a lot of shared space. So the source for this is Harvard and the Chan School of Public Health. So between, for instance, moisture and IEQ is an overlay. And the strong overlay you see here also between thermal health, air quality, dust and pest ventilation. All of this is a shared space that really leads to higher, healthier buildings are also more energy performing. Next slide, please. And a quick look at the HVAC systems. We said it before, indoor environmental quality parameters are also part of the smart readiness indicator and are an integral part of the BAC systems of a building. And you can see here we have studies prepared for you that come from the US. You see the quotes below that 30 to 40% of the energy consumption is coming from the HVAC system, but accounted from that are 30% of the global CO2 emissions, and that study is based on 2020. So you see that studies show that 30% of the HVAC energy in commercial buildings is also wasted due to operational inefficiencies, and that can be addressed if there is a higher impact of a higher view on the building operations and how the energy is used of a building. If we go to the next slide here. Important to drive those reductions is a healthy look at the data of the consumption. And you see here how healthy buildings require data and action. And that's where smart buildings come in. So you see all the different parameters here and how they are captured by sensors. And then also part of the building management system, which is nowadays often are e-enabled and optimized, and that's leading to increased reporting and to smart building control. If we go to the next slide, please. So to truly deliver as a building, there are a lot of variables that need to be optimized, and artificial intelligence has a big role to play to move the data quickly and to really enhance not only the efficiency of the building, but also the indoor environmental quality. And if we go to the next slide. And we can skip this in the interest of time. Let's go to the next slide. Just to sum up, why are healthy buildings important? They really focus on a people-centric building design, increased quality and ventilation, reduces airborne contaminants, and improves cognitive performance. Energy and sustainability play a big part for buildings and can be significantly reduced by the use of BAC systems, of which also ventilation systems are part. And healthy buildings lead to higher productivity, talent retention, and are part of market drivers such as also ESG reporting standards. So, and the bottom line is that healthy buildings focus on people, planet, and also the performance of people. Thank you for your attention.
Thanks a lot, Christina. That was a really good presentation. I think a lot of very important messages in terms of the technology already being there, the business case being there, both for people and for companies to engage. So that's really good. I think we can move on now to the last but not least of the presentations, and I'll pass on the floor to Connor from SEI to give us his experience from Ireland.
Good morning. My name is Conor Hannafy, and I've been involved in many projects and programs within SEI. I've also had active engagement with EPBD and EED forums. So I'd like to take you through, if you could go next slide, please. I'd like to take you through the Warmth and Wellbeing pilot program, which formed part of Ireland's energy poverty, energy efficiency program, which I manage, and I'll take you through the key findings. Okay, so by way of background, we're aware of the IEA publication of the multiple benefits published in 2015, which explored the multiple benefits related to energy efficiency potential, and to explore non-energy routes to energy efficiency, consideration also of Ireland's energy poverty action plan, and a commitment to investment to measuring the health benefits. And that led to the objectives of the pilot project to produce evidence of multiple benefits of energy efficiency, provide free deep retrofits for households at risk of energy poverty, to identify non-energy routes reaching this target group, and invest in measuring health benefits to improve the knowledge base, and to make the case for whole of government approach to health and climate policy. The next slide, please. So this involved a range of stakeholders, and that's probably key to the success of the pilot. It involved the Department of Environment, Department of Health, the Health Service Executive, Sustainable Energy Authority of Ireland, the London School of Tropical Medicine, in collaboration with UCL, the University College London. So they're quite a broad range of stakeholders, but important key players in delivering the project. Next slide, please. Okay, by way of overview, the scheme was piloted in a designated health region, communities, community services plus hospital services. And the scheme was governed by a steering group made up of two ministries, the Ministry of Health and the Ministry of Environment, and an implementation team in executive agencies. The overall operation was supported by professional program management from Prospectus, who's an external provider appointed to project manage the pilot. The scheme was led and largely funded by the Department of Environment, Climate and Communications. By way of recruitment, the Health Service Executive worked closely to recruit eligible participants in the area, and advertised through local media and social welfare offices. But this soon became means of word of mouth, which generated interest in the areas. By way of eligibility, its residents in certain areas of Dublin were selected. They were at risk of energy poverty, and that was demonstrated by their receipt of certain Department of Social Welfare payments, and those living with chronic respiratory conditions, such as COPD and asthma. By way of age, it's 56 years of age were included, and also under 12, but not included in the London School of Tropical Medicine research. Owner occupied or rented from local authority approved housing body. And the scheme was delivered by ourselves, the Sustainable Energy Authority of Ireland. It included a range of measures free to the applicants, which included attic and wall insulation, window and door replacement, appropriate ventilation, which obviously aligns with a number of the key speakers' address related to ventilation and its association with their air quality, draft proofing, and in some cases heating systems upgrades or installations. And works were carried out by appointed contractors in SEI. Next slide, please. So scheme was delivered, and it required a different approach, really dealing with vulnerable households, of which we've become very accustomed to on the programme now. The intention was to make things better, not worse, due to the process, and simplify the process by way of providing surveying capabilities, leveraging the EPC pre and post works bar and various other instruments to deliver the works. Keeping homeowner at the forefront of the process with on-hand support, application and communication, and right throughout the process. Data was collected both at pre and post, and incorporated self-reporting research questionnaire from the HSE, health related to respiratory health, home oxygen, GP, emergency department visits, and on well-being, thermal comfort, ability to pay energy bills, temperature control, social interactions, and the general health survey instrument managed by the HSE, so the EQ 5D health questionnaire, and also the St. George respiratory questionnaire and the short form 36. Also, information was collected from the drug prescriptions data and building survey data. On a certain cohort of homes, temperature monitors were placed and hourly data was collected, and this covered winter periods, the heating season before and after intervention. Next slide, please. So by way of outcome, what the study has shown is that there was an increase in winter indoor temperatures as a result of the works, reduced decline in indoor temperatures when it was very cold, reduced diurnal variation during the day, little variation, self-reporting status, improved well-being scores on multiple dimensions, for example, mobility, self-care, pain, anxiety, and depression, and showed improvements in all these areas. Healthcare, reduced usage of doctors, emergency departments, and hospital services, and reduced volume of prescription drugs. And there's also some positive implications with lower mortality, which was incorporated into modelling outcomes. Next, yeah, please. So the achievements and benefits of the pilot, over 1,600 homes were successfully retrofitted, and these attracted warmer and healthier home environment for people with respiratory health conditions, and also the energy savings and emissions reductions. But I think the pilot really took the emphasis from a health perspective, which is key driver, and established evidence based on health benefits of energy efficiency, replicated the mainstream aspects of the pilot. So the pilot is already, those insights are already incorporated into mainstream delivery. Reach vulnerable people that were not on HSE's state's radar, establish strong and enduring working relations between departments and agencies, developed a lessons learned to inform approach going forward, and gained knowledge in terms of the vulnerable groups. Next, please. And so in concluding, the warmth and wellbeing pilot scheme resulted in predominantly beneficial and substantial effects on health, improvements in physical and mental health and well-being, as well as social impacts and reduced health system contacts, increases in winter indoor temperatures, effects maintained for 2 years after intervention. Certain types of energy efficiency measures appear and associated with more improved temperatures. Health benefits support promotion of home energy efficiency measures more widely alongside environmental and economic benefits. Next slide, please. And I may finish then with a number of quotations, and sometimes while we've incorporated robust research, some of the human stories can tell the story quite powerfully. There's one account where the rooms were once damp and condensation getting into my bed at night. is as much more pleasant experience now. They say the house holds the heat now where it didn't before. So using gas is not as expensive. They now look forward to the winter as they can see the full benefits of their home energy upgrade. And early signs this year are that the symptoms of Mr. Smith's COPD are less severe than previous years. I'll read one more, which will give you another sense from a different applicant. Received a phone call today from a 75-year-old man diagnosed with a chronic respiratory condition. This man attended the respiratory outpatient department in St. James's Hospital last year and received a respiratory assessment with a lung capacity of 61%. He got his works done with the Warmth and Wellbeing pilot program last year and reports that everything was brilliant and he was delighted with the works to his house. He also reports that his lung capacity this year in the respiratory outpatient clinic has increased to 70%, and he contributes this to the fact that he's been living in a much healthier space since works have been done. Good news story for the day. I conclude on that. Happy to take questions.
Thank you very much. I think it was a great presentation. It's great to bring also people back at the forefront of the positive results and experience that are resulting from those programs. Thank you very much for sharing this experience. We'll move on to the final Q&A session of the day. So again, I encourage you all, if you have questions, to ask them in the chat. I'll be passing them on to the speakers. I invite all the speakers to bring their cameras back on. And just waiting for questions from the audience, I have a few still in store for you. And I'll actually start with Connor. And so you've mentioned all the great benefits and the results from this program. Do you see this and use them as an argument to drive public support for energy efficiency policies? How are these results fitting in the work of ACEI moving forward?
Yeah, absolutely. So we've engaged with the EPBD and ED groups, concerted action groups, to inform on the transposition of legislation. So we're very supportive of the implementations of those regulations, which include ventilation, for example, and ventilation has formed part of mainstream delivery. And so we incorporated those ventilation requirements within the pilot and also transposed as part of the mainstream delivery. And that's just one element of ensuring that the underpinning levers are incorporated into the program. Also, our engagement with applicants has been very, very much to the forefront in listening to applicants and listening to their stories. And I suppose in terms of the energy efficiency piece, communicating that in a consumer-friendly way and guiding what are a vulnerable cohort through the process.
I think that's really interesting, and that's something that we see in other member states also. Like when France, for example, implemented this minimum energy performance standards for the rental sector, the main arguments to sell the measure politically was around decency of housing, not so much around energy efficiency. And that's interesting to see how we can bring the general population along with this kind of measures using the multiple benefits of energy efficiency measures. Now I've quite of a broad question for all speakers actually around climate resilience. This has been mentioned by quite a few of you. And how do you see the IEQ requirements as a sort of first segue into developing more of a policy arsenal to deal with the changing climate and the adaptation of our building stock to a new reality coming? So maybe starting with Marco, because you've mentioned that in the guidance, but then moving on to any other speaker who wants to answer.
Yes, sorry, I missed the first part of the question. Can you repeat, please?
Yeah, sure. So how can these concept around IEQ and IEQ measures help start addressing the impact of climate change on buildings and feed into this arsenal of solutions for climate adaptation for buildings?
Well, it's a very complicated question because of course we are now dealing catching up, and this is a kind of a new concept that we are trying to. It's not necessarily a new concept, but it's something that we are trying to introduce more and more strongly in our policies. What I see is that indeed it has to change the way buildings are designed in a way that the climate has changed. And for example, also in the EPBD and also in the cost-optimal methodology, we start talking about including a forward-looking perspective when designing buildings. And indoor environmental quality is a significant part of it because indeed it's not only a matter of comfort inside the buildings, but it's also a way to make buildings more, let's say, adjusted to the change of climate that it's coming. And what we do not want is basically that we are going to install more and more air conditioning because the climate is getting warmer, because we want people to feel to not be energy efficiency in building, but rather we want to really tackle it as a structural measure. And I think that policies of indoor environmental quality should really prioritize also, and when designing new buildings, also creating passive conditions, first of all, so addressing with passive measures, and then when the situation is going to change, in effect, that active measures are needed, then we can talk about active solutions. So I think that it's really it's something that is happening now, but I think it's also looking for the future, and this is a way that I think that indoor environmental qualities could affect also the building stock also for the future. I think.
Great. Thanks a lot, Christina. I see you have your hand up. Please complement.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Happy to take it. Happy to take it. Thank you. So with increased climate change, we will also see in some areas an increase in wildfire smoke events. We will see ground level ozone and other pollutants. Pollen seasons will increase, and dust and particulate will also transport higher during drought periods. So from an IEQ perspective, the needs are that we will see higher grade filtration in many climates, smart ventilation that monitors outdoor and indoor air, and we will also need switchable modes. So recirculation, for instance, during smoke events. And that will also lead to increased need for continuous IEQ monitoring. And buildings are designed now more to seal out the bad air that would come from the outside, while still keeping CO2 levels inside the building at a measurable level. And with the climate, we can also say that we see more humid winters, and we see also sudden intense rainfall. I think we can all speak to that. So moist control design is also really an important feature that we see in the IEQ requirements, and also what the solutions, the technical solutions, can do today. So thank you.
Thank you, Christina. Jens.
Yes, and thanks again. A very interesting question and very politically important question. As we mentioned, we need to consider both the people and the planet, and we have a responsibility for both the people who occupy, as well as what we kind of solution that we are reducing the footprint of the material and the buildings material we use. So we have a responsibility on many places, and I think I will continue a little bit about in the direction that Marco said, that if we are able to do that and we'll lower our consumption, and as a first instance try to use the passive measures we can use, so we can try to use the measures we have and try to anticipate that we do reach a climate that will be challenging, of course. But it could also be that for new build, we need to consider rethink the way we design today. Maybe we need to adjust a little bit the way we design today and not continue as is. And of course, we need to consider what can we do with the existing building mass, as Romain also talking. What can we do with all the existing building mass, because they are equally important. So I think there's a highly important that we are not focusing on just few things, but quite broad things. I know that is a big question, but I will emphasize that we have a responsibility in general.
Thanks a lot. So Marco mentioned the whole time the EPBD implementation. It'd be great to hear from you, kind of how things are going in Ireland. Do you feel equipped and ready to deliver on well, ED implementation was on the 11th of October for the deadline. EPBD is on the 29th of May next year. How do you see those deadlines and Ireland's work in terms of implementation?
Yeah, I suppose we've come through quite a lot of change actually on the programs. I suppose more recently, the last number of years, the COVID and its effect on supply chain. But we've tackled those particular challenges quite well. The program itself is energy poverty and dealing with vulnerable applicants. So it can be quite challenging in terms of change. And so, for example, we've successfully implemented the discontinuation of funding for fossil fuels from the 1st of January, and that was quite a significant change. And so we've incorporated renewables into the system. So it's adding value again. So based on those insights from the pilot, we're going a step further. So we see the EPBD and EED as enabling the program's success and growth. And so we continue to engage with counterparts on key changes emerging, such as the harmonization of EPC and those changes. And so we will work with our stakeholders and the regulatory bodies within SEI to transpose those directives and to implement them, I suppose, on the ground. Yeah. So we're used to change, and we'll work the new changes coming through. I suppose what we find is being involved in the various working groups with yourselves and with the EPBD and EPC makes the change process easier, because we can inform it and shape it in some degree.
It's great to hear. I think there's quite a bit of work to be done by member states in the coming months, and it's also great when countries that are a bit more advanced and have experience, long-standing experience with this kind of program, also can share it with a wider audience for like we're organized today, but also more broadly. So thanks a lot for that. Just before we close, I'll open the floor one last time if you have any final words on this topic of IEQ, and then we'll bring this webinar to close. So maybe starting with you, Marco.
Here I am. No, thank you very much for inviting me. I do not have much more to add. Just maybe I can reiterate that the guidance, I put in the chat the links to the guidance document and specifically to the Annex 10 that is related to the topic of today. But we have 13 topic-specific annexes that can be read, and I think they are a useful read for member states, authority, but also useful read for the public and for professionals, I believe. And maybe just recall that on the 25th of November, we will also have the publication of the guidance package in all EU languages, which hopefully is going to further support the implementation.
Thanks a lot, Marco. I'll make sure to share that as widely as we can.
Yeah.
Roman?
Thank you very much.
Yes, maybe I can add just one last thing. It would be my last remark on the climate resilience aspect, how indoor environmental quality can be a tool to help climate resilience in buildings. It's actually more of a best practice than a remark, but multiple EU countries, for instance, Belgium, Denmark, or even France, introduced EIQ requirements to limit overheating risk. They use climate data, such as data on heat waves, to assess this aspects. So I think it's interesting also to see how it can be used very concretely in these countries. But that's it for me. And our implementation guide is available. I believe someone put it in the chat, the link. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Roman. Jens?
Yes, and thank you once again for this very important webinar. I think it's essential for the future of our buildings and the way we do design buildings. So, and especially also the importance of the indoor environmental quality indicators that we have talked about today. If we are able also to get those implemented in local legislation across Europe, I think that is that could also help a lot for the building designers, because to bring the awareness of the importance of these indicators that we have talked about today. So that will be I think hope for the future, that we have a common legislation across Europe that would take the importance of these elements into considerations.
Thanks a lot indeed. Having a directive is good, implementation is even better. So we're all focusing on that at the moment. Christina.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for hosting this webinar in such a timely fashion. It's really important that we have this discussion. Of course, we are very happy that Article 2 of the EPBD now also calls out for more IEQ standards and puts WOC and CO2 front and center of what indoor environmental quality is. And we also acknowledge that buildings are very different across regions in Europe, and they are also subject to different climates and different weather conditions and different build. So yes, there must be flexibility on how the IEQ parameters are implemented, but at the same time, we would think that it's very important that we do not risk a big patchwork of implementation standards. So we are happy that the guidance is along the EN directive that Roman quoted, but it's also really important that there is not a big divergence on how the standards are implemented to allow also for some single market criteria and the whole EPBD implementation. And thank you again for hosting today.
Perfect. A very clear message for the end. Connor?
Yeah, again, thanks for the opportunity to speak at the event, and very much enjoyed the other speakers. I suppose my key signing off message would be that we continue to tell the human story. There's a lot of really good work being done, and we bring people with us and tell that human story.
Thanks a lot, and thanks a lot to all the participants who attended. Just a quick reminder that we'll make the recording and the presentation available to all. Thanks a lot for following us. There'll be other episodes continuing this series on EPBD implementation. We'll continue to deep dive in specific articles, specific themes. So stay connected, join our social media. Very happy to be here with all of you today. Thank you and have a good day.
Thank you.